Hello, my friend. How you doing?
Perfect. And you?
Wonderful.
All right.
I had a question about Atlantean stuff.
Yes, Atlantean stuff.
The Atlantean hypnosis.
There's a big box of Atlantean stuff.
Let's open the lid.
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. What would you like to know?
So you often talk about Atlantean hypnosis technologies and the drum technologies.
Yes.
And what kind of skin did they make their drums out of in those days, and what proportions and whatnot?
It is more literally the idea of hollowed out logs, not skins.
Logs. Can you elaborate on that, please?
You don't know what a log is?
I do know what a log is, Bashar. So hollowed out logs, but like, what do you mean? What like, would they tap it with their hands or?
No, they could tap with sticks. You know what a stick is, right?
Stick. How would you say stick in Atlantean, Bashar?
That vocabulary is not within the channel's mind, where there's no translation for us to come through.
So there's no like syntax we could open up from Atlantean language, like Tai Chi or community. Any beautiful words like that?
Again, the words, the vocabulary has to be in the channel's mind for there to be a translation on this end and for us to translate through to you. There has to be something that represents it. The closest thing at this point that represents it is the word stick.
Awesome. And so with sticks and a hollowed out log, and would that be in a temple of certain proportions?
Yes, it often could be. It doesn't have to be, but it could be.
Okay, so it could also be done in nature outside?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so I'm really into this idea, the science of the obvious, and making things really evident, where we as humans plummeted ourselves in this idea of limitation and separation, where we make the most simple of ideas most complex.
Yes. Now, watch, because don't automatically assume that limitation is negative.
No, not at all.
All right.
Yeah, I love exploring limitations so
All
much.
right.
So
the idea is, of course, you are imposing limitations on yourself to even have a physical experience.
yes,
Therefore, you're using it in a positive way.
yes. So we must have some kind of resistance for some kind of existence.
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
It's simply something that you've chosen to do because it's an exciting experience that will allow you to discover something new about yourself from a different perspective. Therefore, you had to impose certain limitations on your self-awareness in order to have a limited experience that would give you a new perspective. But that's a very positive thing if done that way. That's all we're saying, is don't automatically assume the word in your language, limitation, is automatically a negative thing or a negative experience.
Not at all.
All right.
Yeah, because
So back to your sticks.
yeah, back to the sticks. So the idea of getting in this hypnotic journey
Yes.
with the drums
Yes.
is that's kind of basic of what we're doing today. There's nothing special that they were doing different.
Well, only in the sense that they understood specifically that they had to match the person's heartbeat first,
Yes.
so that there would be a synchronization, and then they would start to slow the drum beat down very slowly, very imperceptibly almost, until the person fell into the hypnotic state by their heart following the drum beat, once they were entrained to match its frequency.
So that's a two-way conjunction.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a dialogue of rhythms, of vibrations.
And beautiful. And through that soothed state brings on the hypnotic journey.
Yes.
So our idea of hypnosis is akin to theirs, or is there
It's
some
similar.
specific structures that might be different? That might be a big leverage
similar.
difference.
They would then create certain kinds of information using certain vibrational words and tones, maybe even sometimes in song, to impart the information. But mostly what they would do would be to tell story, because they understood that story structure is embedded in your psyche. And therefore, by telling information in the form of a story, it is more easily retained, especially from the hypnotic state. It can actually unlock you from one perspective of reality into a completely different perspective of reality if done with artistry, which they did.
Beautiful.
So in other words, they allowed through story and the drum beats and the hypnotic state, perhaps in teaching, let's say, for example, someone about the idea of sailing ships, you would become the sail. You would become the mast. You would experience the wind in the hypnotic state. By the time you came out of it, you would innately in your body understand exactly what to do to operate a sailing ship, because you would have been one in your experience in the way they induced the story through your story, structure, psyche. You would have been on a voyage as a sailing ship, not only as a sailor, but as the ship, as the wind, as the sea, as the gulls, as the entire experience. It would be literally in your bones by the time you came out of it.
Wow, that is deep.
It is.
And that's
That didn't necessarily happen in one session.
Yes.
Don't
okay.
misunderstand.
Okay.
But the artistry was to entrain in a way that it was simply infused within the cells of the person in a very, very natural way, so that they just really, as you would say, got it.
Beautiful.
It became them, they became it.
Yes, totally entrained.
Yeah.
And was this the main center point of Atlantean education?
Well, there were several, but it was done in the main capital quite often, and there were several temples in which this was done, or systems or places of education.
Great. And Atlantis of being the legend of a worldwide initiatic...
Oh, wait, we have one word for you. Because their actual ancient name was Aslan.
Aslan. That's right.
Aslan.
Aslan.
A-Z-T-L-A-N. Aslan.
Oh, with the T. Aslan.
Yes, Aslan.
Aslan.
Yes.
So an Aslan. I just went on a hypnotic journey real quick. 1 second.
Yes.
Okay, so the idea of it, Aslan, being a worldwide initiatic culture?
Well, many, many people from around the world went there for educational purposes, and they did extend some of that to different parts of the world. But it wasn't global quite in the way that you're global now. Mm-hmm. They did have certain centers in different parts of the planet, but it wasn't as extensive as your technology allows it to be now.
Gotcha. And the idea of the mysteries and the idea of initiation and becoming more of yourself, all these ideas, even through Atlantean times, are just permission slips to get people in touch with more parts of themselves.
Of course.
So like the idea in many esoteric and magical traditions, they're all fighting over permission slips and saying who has the right permission slip.
Yes.
But the idea, if you understand the core construct of the
Yes.
science of the obvious and the initiation and the awakening of the self,
Yes.
then it becomes evident and obvious.
Yes, that's
Yes.
why we give you the simple structural formula. So that you don't have to necessarily compound it with things that you don't necessarily need, unless you believe you do. That's your choice. Then it comes down to a choice, as opposed to something you think has to be done in order for you to really have a deep understanding.
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes, and so then the alignment of the different energy bodies and physical body, the mental body, so to speak,
So to speak.
Humpty Dumpty breaking apart and coming back together again, was that the same theme that the Atlanteans were going through, that we are going through as well?
Exactly.
Okay. So that's one thing that I'm highest excitement about, is the hypnosis journey and merging people's consciousness so they're not just stuck on the mental plane,
Yes.
but so when they're thinking, they're actually re-engaging their thinking with vibration and feeling and
Yes.
thought and artistry and vision.
Yes.
So they're not just dry mental constructs talking.
Yes.
Okay.
Because a dry mental construct will never really get you that deep.
Yes. And that's why you can only take people as deep as you have been.
Well, yes, although some people can go deeper with much less incentive if they're already prepared for it than even sometimes the teacher. It just depends on the person. But you might trigger them to go deeper than you have been. It's possible.
Wonderful. And as far as like the story, you've talked about the Bible being the stories of Atlantis.
Well, some of it, yes.
Some of them.
Not all of it.
And some that were maybe the Nag Hammadi that was taken out, the Gnostic scriptures. Can you
Well, there are
comment?
many, many different kinds of scriptures and gospels that were never put into what you call your official Bible. You know that.
Yes. And the idea of Enoch becoming Metatron, was that the idea of one of the Anunnaki ascending into higher spiritual initiations?
Sort of. We're
Sort
not
of?
going to go into detail on that story at the moment, but you're sort of in the right neighborhood, but there are details that are missing.
Okay. And as far as the Melchizedek energies,
Yes.
how I know, we've talked about this a lot with Tote and everything.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
how have you experienced, I've experienced Tote in different ways. How have you experienced Tote in different ways?
I have had tea with Tote.
You have had tea with Tote.
I am using a euphemism, but that's all you're going to get right now.
What do you think
Does
about
that
the
make
serpent?
me a teetotaler?
A teetotaler? Okay. What do you tell me about the bane of the serpent? We've talked about the serpent a lot, but
We did, but I already told you that's all you're going to get right now.
well, as far as like
That's
overcoming
all
fear.
you're going to get right now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, my
Well, you're
friend.
very welcome.
Always appreciating you.
And us as well to you.
Shivai.
Shivai.
Infinite gratitude and appreciation your way and the services you provide.
Ha'atu.
So my first question is, when you're doing work with Daryl's electromagnetic field,
Yes.
is there
Not so much that we're doing work. It's simply that the idea of our vibrational connection causes certain vibrational amplifications and frequencies to naturally occur in his electromagnetic field around his body.
now, is there like a feedback that happens with specific audiences or specific members
Yes,
of the
of
audience?
course, because that's how we read all of you, energy patterns, because we're not seeing you directly. So we're reading a language of energy patterns. It is actually a kind of language. It comes in shapes and forms and other kinds of symbols, but it is a language of energy patterns.
Oh, thanks. I was specifically wondering about a certain location in California called Santa Cruz and what that place represents within the portals on the earth.
It represents a kind of crossroads.
As I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When I've been studying how to shift to different parallel realities,
When you've been studying about how to be more conscious of the fact you're already doing that, you mean?
right.
All right.
So I want to cite an example.
Yes.
Like I am doing my best to shift to a clean earth where
Yes.
everything's cleaner than it is
And
now.
so what actions physically are you taking in order to speak the language that that's the reality you're in?
Right. So my next question is me having to give up driving my automobile, me voting for that cleaner parallel reality?
It might be if that's what makes sense to you. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it might be. Or you might attract something that would be, in your mind, a cleaner representation of mode of transport that can be expressed in many different ways, but you have to be honest with yourself about what it means to you, what works for you, what it represents to you. And as when you are clear about that, it may or may not require a different mode of transportation. It just depends. You have to play it out and see what happens. See what synchronicity brings you, what opportunities open up for you. It might mean what you said, but it might not. But you find out by acting on whatever passion you can act on.
Okay. I'll
Yes?
work with that.
All right. Will that do? Or is there something else?
I have one more question.
Yes.
I've gone to multiple health practitioners and
Yes.
having some health issues.
You
and
know I don't discuss
I know you
health
don't
issues.
do them, but at least on a metaphysical level,
Yes.
I was wondering, what is it that I'm working with specifically for me in my process? Because there are days where it's so debilitating.
What are you experiencing?
Multiple things, but chronic pain is
Where?
the back, mid-back.
All right. Well, may I ask you if you have a belief system that doesn't believe acting on your passion will support you?
Yeah, I've grown up believing that, like, I'm supporting myself. So
All right. But you find the idea of support to be a strain instead of something that can automatically flow to you.
right.
Well, why aren't you allowing the automatic flow to happen? What's the resistance to that? What is the disbelief that you can be actually supported in the way that you need to be?
I guess I maybe misperceive what outward help, aid, and assistance actually looks like.
Well, you know there are many forms of abundance, as we've discussed, yes? There is the idea on your planet of the symbol that's called money, but there's also the idea of being given a gift. That's a form of abundance. There's also the idea that you could trade for something. That's a form of abundance. Synchronicity is a form of abundance. Imagination is a form of abundance because it opens up paths you may not have thought about before that might require other things other than what you think you need. You have to let them come in whatever form they need to come, and maybe sometimes even in whatever combination they need to come. Maybe sometimes the support, the abundance that's automatically in the kit of excitement may need a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that in order to form the 100% support that you require at that moment to allow you to continue to act on your excitement. So it sometimes will require you relaxing your definitions about what you think abundance should look like, what form it should come in, thinking that it has to be that or something won't work or I'm not supported if it doesn't come this way or doesn't look like that. Relaxing your insistence on the way in which support must appear can also allow you to know you're always supported. And thus you will start to feel that you are supported and you won't feel a strain in the symbol of support, which is your back, your spine, your muscles in that area. You need to relax into the idea that you're always supported and let the different forms come to you in the way that synchronicity brings them to you. Instead of thinking you have to make it work, force it to work. That's a strain. That's what you're straining. You're not going with your own flow. You're resisting your own flow. Your current knows where you need to go. Just float along with it. You'll wind up where you need to be. You will be supported along the way because that's one of the tools in the kit. Let it work for you. Don't try to make it work. Let it work. Let it do what it naturally does. And you will feel supported. And you will not be strained. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does this help?
Thank you very much. Aveo.
Aveo.
Hi, Bashar.
And good day.
Okay, want to talk to you about O, who is a parallel life connection of mine that I've been channeling for about 30 years.
Oh.
Yes, O, and I've talked to you many times about him.
Yes.
And also a parallel life connection with you, Xeon, from Sirius.
Oh, all right. Yes, because if you were going to say it was Hassani, I was going to say no.
No. Sirius.
All
Both
right.
of you from Sirius. And I've talked to you about this, and O and you have, Xeon has said that they're on the Syrian Council of 13.
And what do you want me to say about that?
I want you to tell me about the Syrian Council of 13. You know, we had the skulls with the Council of 13 here. What is the, can you tell me a little bit about the Syrian Council of 13?
I can tell you a little bit,
Oh.
because that's really a subject for another time, farther in the future.
Oh.
But we're allowed to give you this.
Okay.
Physical beings from Sirius have visited your world many times in the past.
Right.
They have brought with them many times knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, architecture, many other things that helped people on your planet recover after the disaster that we talked about from cometary impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so they formed a specific body of individuals to interact with Earth and to observe and monitor your recovery. That eventually became the Council of 13 that you know about, although there are other Syrian councils, particularly one called the Tribunal.
Okay.
But we'll get into that another time. But the Council of 13 you're referring to with regard to Sirius has to do with the idea of guiding the inhabitants of Earth back into a conscious realization of their self-empowerment, their knowledge, preservation, of understanding of the cosmos and their connection to Earth and many other things. And so they have become that to you, to Earth.
I'm shaking, sort of, I must be picking up energy, sort of like I do with Willa, that I haven't experienced with you before.
Well, but you're experiencing the idea of us talking about the Sirius energy. And therefore, it's a high frequency energy. And therefore, we're dampening it down a little bit, but you're still feeling some of it, and it's running through your body.
Yeah, very definitely.
All right.
Okay, thank you for that.
You are welcome.
Now, Lily,
Yes.
Stargazer,
Yes.
who I've been having a lot of fun with,
All right.
she and Will has talked about this. When I go on visits to see her, she's been teaching me how to see in her timeline,
Yes.
700 years upline.
Yes, yes, yes.
And when I went for one visit, she took the tesseract. There was 9 symbols, and I went brought the tesseract, went into the dimensional doorway, and she said, "Go in, you will meet a parallel reality, or parallel connection life of yours." Went in, met Dr. James Simon. I didn't know that was his name at the time.
Yes.
But I saw this doc. He's human. Saw the doctor, and he was working with a 10-year-old boy.
Yes.
And so I could see the energy field of the boy and what he was working with.
Yes.
So then when I came out, then I said to Lily, so he started working with me the next day telepathically.
Yes.
And he's an energy healing doctor.
Yes.
Okay. And this was in June of last year.
Yes.
And then he worked with me on quite a few different things in my body
Yes.
and getting that ready. And then he started working in December with other people.
Yes.
And he insisting people in healing themselves. And so this is quite interesting.
Well, yes, it is, and it's even more interesting than you know.
Oh, tell
Now,
me.
you know what we say about the idea of reincarnation, right?
Right,
Everything's happening at once,
right,
and you're making connections,
yes.
but I'm just going to put it in the colloquial language, just because.
Okay,
Reincarnationally, as an experience, you're not only the doctor, you're the 10-year-old boy too. Working with yourself in that way so as to have both sides of that experience here in your connection.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, he's been doing some tremendous work.
Yes. Do you have a question?
About that?
Do you have a question?
In general you're talking about.
Well, you are making comments, and that's fine. But do you have a question? Or are you just going to make comments? That's all right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I guess I was sharing with you.
Oh, all right.
And
Share.
then with the Lily visits,
Yes.
I'm now working with other people
Yes.
who are going to see her.
Yes.
And they're having quite the experiences
All right.
in her timeline.
Congratulations.
Now, Dr. Also, I just met Dr. Alicio, and she's a Yael hybrid.
Yes.
Okay. And she's an energy healer with Dr. Simon.
Sort of, yes.
What do you mean by sort of?
You're not going to know that now, but sort of, yes.
Okay. So I just started working with her and on a cellular regeneration with aging and losing weight and that. I just started working with her about
All
a month
right.
ago.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Simon has what he calls wands, okay, that he uses with people.
Wave
And-
guides, yes.
Wave guides?
Yes.
Okay.
A wand is a wave guide. Well, let me put it this way. A wand is what humans have made out of their distant memory of people using wave guides to channel certain frequencies. It has been reduced to the legendary or mythical idea of a wand. But that's what they were. They were wave guides.
Okay. And then she worked with me with a probe and
Another wave guide.
another wave guide. And I understand that from the Yael, she introduced that in 2000. He's in 2066. They are, and introduced these wave.
Give or take around that era.
Not 2066.
Well, you're naming 1 year, but you're talking about a longer process. So yes, that year is involved, but there are some years on either side that are involved as well.
Okay, explain that to me, because Willis said the same thing. When I said to her 2066,
Yes.
and she said, well, that's 1 year. I don't understand that. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that?
You are pinpointing one singular year as if what you're describing only happened in that year.
No,
But-
just that he exists in 2066, like
Yes.
I exist here in 2019.
Yes,
Yes.
that's fine.
Okay.
We just didn't know if you meant that that was the only year.
That he existed
Well,
in?
because that's the only year you called out.
Okay, then explain that further for me. Then,
It's not mysterious. We're just simply saying you are saying somebody exists in 2066.
Right.
We just wanted to see if there was a reason why you pinpointed that particular year as opposed to 2065. Did he not exist in 2065?
yes, that's when I met him in 2065.
Then why did you pinpoint 2066?
Because their years go like ours do. He's human, and
Yes.
he's living. So last
So
year
you
when
are paralleling on
yeah,
your calendar.
last year when I met him, it was 2065 for
Now
him.
we understand.
2018
All
for
right.
me.
You didn't explain that you were paralleling your calendars.
Okay, and that's correct. Correct.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, okay. So what do these wands look like? Because I haven't seen them.
Well, they're usually tubular. They do sort of look like your wands, but they're waveguides, which means they are tubular and structured in certain lengths, certain ratios
Right.
of diameter to carry certain waves of energy through them.
Yeah. Okay.
So they sort of look like wands, but they're a little bit more technical than that.
Right. And did she said that she introduced it from the Yael civilization?
Yes, because that's one of the things that the Yael civilization is going to be doing when they start interacting with you, is showing you different things about where some of your technological ideas or mythological ideas came from that might have originally been based on technology. It's one of the things that will be reintroduced. As we said, remember, they're going to give you your entire history. That's one of
Right.
the gifts that Open Contact will give you, is records of your entire true history. It will include knowledge like that.
Okay. And now she's been working with me with the probe, and for, like I said, losing weight.
Yeah.
I've lost 4 pounds
All right.
in the last week or so.
Yes.
And she's working with, I've always been into age regression. I mean, for
Yes.
taking your, so can you tell me a little bit about that?
Nope.
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 Okay, so I'll find out more myself.
You will.
Okay, so yeah, in 2066, have you landed yet?
Yes.
Great. Can you tell us in 66 or how
That's
many
an
years?
outside window that we are comfortable telling you is absolutely within the window of probability, but we cannot pinpoint a year for you because the probabilities are still in flux, although we know that that's an outside window beyond the probability points.
Okay,
So it will happen by then,
by then.
but we can't tell you exactly when it will happen before then.
Okay. The last thing is, I've never talked to you about this, but around 1990, 1991,
Yes?
I took 4 friends, and we went up to the desert in the summertime, and to see if we could see a UFO.
Yeah.
And after about an hour or so, there was one.
Yes.
It was disc shape,
Yes.
and it had lights like going around it,
Yes.
and it was there for maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yes.
We talked telepathically with it.
Yes.
Don't remember what we said. It was many years ago.
Yes.
Can you tell me? I felt it was Palladian, but I don't
No.
know. No.
Grays.
What? Oh, that was the Greys?
Yes.
Okay.
But a particular faction. And no, I can't explain the difference to you right now.
So you can't tell. So was that a connection for all of us, or a connection for myself?
Well, all of you, but different degrees for each person in different ways. Because you were together for a reason.
All right.
Therefore, they addressed all of you to a certain degree in certain ways. But it was different for each person to some degree.
How about my connection?
What about it?
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Not now.
Not now. Okay.
Not in public.
Not in public?
Correct.
Oh,
It's not for anyone but you.
okay. So,
We'll talk another time.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Tadea.
Nania.
Well, I just got a tsunami of questions on Atlantis.
How topical.
Okay, so let me ask a few of those questions.
Yes.
Most of what we know of Atlantis comes from the Casey material. Can you talk about the migration to Egypt and the pyramid prophecies, which end in 2038? Well, how are they so precise?
Again, they understood cycles of time in Atlantis very precisely. They understood how things play out, but do understand they were also only talking about certain probabilities and the probability of those probable realities coming into manifestation. So there is a little bit of a window there, not just precisely the idea of that year of 2038, but they're looking at the idea of cycles, and sometime around that time there is another probability of another body, asteroidal, cometary in nature, that has a probability of impacting the Earth in and around that time. That's what the cycle is talking about. The cycles of impacts upon the Earth. That is, shall we say, frozen in the stone of what they built, that was there for you to interpret so that you would understand these cycles as well, and in a sense put yourself in a state where you would be able to change and shift the reality so that you would not necessarily have to go through what they went through.
Okay, and then the next one is the crystal technology that they used.
Yes.
Can you talk about the firestone that was accidentally tuned too high and contributed to the destruction of Atlantis?
Well, that's kind of an exaggeration or a lumping together of different incidents. It wasn't one thing that happened one day, that happened on the day that Atlantis was destroyed. But there were destructions that took place. There were things that got out of hand, got out of control with the idea of these manufactured crystals that had the capacity to store energy of the sun, to build up like a capacitor and release it all at once, very abruptly, very powerfully. So some of those experiments got a little out of hand, but they were the result of hubris. And that hubris in the vibration is what brought Atlantis down ultimately. It wasn't so much directly the idea of the firestone crystals, but the idea of the hubris behind creating them.
So speak of the hubris. What is?
Well, I think many of you are steeped in a society that is full of individuals expressing hubris at this point. Are you not? Arrogance.
Keep coming. Just to get the full feeling of what hubris is. That's it, arrogance.
Well, it's sort of the CIA formula we've given you before. C equals I plus A. Cynicism equals ignorance plus arrogance.
Right, because you did mention that cynicism is one of our more destructive...
Yes. It is what can bring you down. Cynicism. The idea of detaching yourself from the understanding of true connection and falling under... falling under the illusion of power instead of the power of the illusion. Yes, really.
So cynicism might be the idea of like people aren't...
Cynicism is thinking you know the answer before you know anything at all.
Is it also sort of anticipating the worst in others?
Not exactly the same thing. No.
Like not an assumption that people will
That's
always do the...
Pessimism.
That's pessimism.
Yes.
Okay. So
cynicism is the idea that you know best no matter what the evidence may say.
So not being willing to temper your perceptions.
Correct.
Based on additional
Not
information.
being open to other points of view or even considering that they may have any validity to them other than your own.
And so it was that type of energy that brought down Atlantis?
That type of hubris created the division between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. And again, there are certain parallels going on in America now.
Yeah, in fact, there's a question here. Let's see.
which may or may not get an answer, depending upon how specific it
yeah.
might be.
Well, it says, I guess that the coming of the comet and the following destruction of Atlantis was no coincidence, obviously.
Obviously.
And could you speak about the preceding imbalances that finally caused the fall of Atlantis? Is that what we
That's
were
what we're
just
talking
talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and
They put themselves in a vibrational reality that was smack in the path of the comet, where there are many other realities where that was not so. But that particular reality and what you are considering your past, because of the connection you've made to the idea of the cyclic nature of coming around again, which to some degree we're going to be talking about in the Angels of Orion transmission, is the idea of connecting to those cycles of destruction and rising and falling, rising and falling, and rising and falling, and starting to learn how to break that chain.
so essentially, we here on Earth at this point,
Yes.
in this reality, are
Yes.
the beings that chose the trajectory that led to the fall of Atlantis, and now we're back making a new choice or attempting
Colloquially
to
put,
make a new choice?
yes. Because that's the most powerful. You remember the rubber band analogy.
Yes.
The farther you pull back into darkness, when you finally let go, you'll fly that much faster and farther into the light. So you're using energy to connect to some very deep, dark, negative experiences so that when you finally get a handle on these vibrations, you will propel yourself into the light that much more powerfully. You're using it as a catapult.
That also means that there was another Atlantis that didn't undergo the
Oh,
destruction.
absolutely. There are many versions of Earth where Atlantis thrived. Absolutely.
It's so interesting. So
I've visited one of them.
do
It's
tell.
profoundly beautiful in ways that you may not even be able to imagine at this point.
Wow. So that's really interesting. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about the whole idea of the same beings that experienced the negative trajectory in Atlantis are now focused on this particular transitional time.
Nope. We'll talk about that again in the transmission called The Angels of Orion.
And did they like take animals and people and like make things?
They understood genetics in a very, very similar way, but had different kinds of capacities to create certain kinds of hybrids that are also the basis of some of your mythological legends of certain kinds of creatures, yes.
Would we find that offensive now, what they were doing?
You would find it the product of incredible cynicism and hubris. It's not that you cannot explore genetics. You can. But remember, it's not about what it is. It's about how you use it. Because they used it to create a race of slaves.
And that doesn't go well, does it?
Not usually.
Okay, so
Remember, your greatest power is the freedom to choose. The greatest prison is taking that freedom away.
from another?
Yes. Slaves. The freedom to choose has been removed. That's what makes a slave.
So those that perpetrate that
Are themselves enslaved, but they think they're not. And as we have often said, just again to use your terminology, the greatest hell is the one you don't even know you're in,
wow.
because you can never escape it, because you don't know you're there. Those that are slavers are themselves enslaved. Those that are prison guards are themselves incapable of leaving the prison. Now, again, it depends on how these things are done. But nevertheless, on a basic principle, you cannot interact with something without in some way becoming a mirror of that thing. So it depends on how you use it, how you understand that reflection that determines what you will experience in your reality, positive or negative. Because everything is a reflection, and that means you are also a reflection of everything.
It's a lot to process.
If you say so.
This last question is about maybe we've already discussed it. We'll see. Currently, Bahamas is going through catastrophic challenges.
Yes.
Does it imply any mirroring effect of the fall of Atlantis?
It does. And so does the Bermuda Triangle phenomenon.
Yes, in fact, one question came in about whether that impacts hurricanes on the East
It does.
Coast.
But we won't go into the actual science of it at this particular point.
Yeah,
but it does.
They were asking, was Bermuda part of Atlantis, and was the triangle, part of it?
The triangle didn't exist then in the way that it exists now. You could say that at this point it's sort of running amok, but it is representative of an energy that they tapped into and got out of hand, again, going back to that understanding, and was one of the reasons for the physiological vibrational attraction of the comet.